Okay, welcome back to web lectures on how to present your business plan. This is the third and final one, and in this web lecture I would like to take you through the evaluation checklist that your lecturers will be using when they're evaluating your presentations. Now, this checklist is just simply a list of requirements that need to be fulfilled, and the requirements fall into different categories. So what I'm going to do is just take each category at a time and explain to you what needs to be done. And of course, the purpose of this is to make sure that you can prepare your presentations optimally. Now, if you look at the first category of requirements, they're formal. These are just the simple things that were also mentioned in the course manual, and four in total. The presentation was sent to the lecturers in advance. Evidence of a practice run was sent to the lecturers in advance. The presentation takes no longer than 15 minutes, and handouts are available for the jury. Now, the one I would like to highlight is the evidence of a practice run. If you think back to the process that we described for preparing a group presentation, you may remember that there were two stages in which you did a practice run. First of all, the third stage, when you did a preliminary practice run, everybody had prepared a particular part of the presentation, and in this practice run you just wanted to check how it all went together, whether everybody got their timing right, whether there was not too much overlap between presentations, and also you would like to determine how you could provide smooth transitions from one topic into the next. So this was the first practice run, and then in stage 5 there was a second practice run in which you basically practiced the refined presentation. So everybody had still been working on their piece, the transitions had been taken care of. Now what the lecturers would like you to do is simply take a photograph of one of these two practice runs, make sure that the photograph shows that you actually did it as a group, of course, and send it together with the presentation to the lecturers. With respect to the time, of course, you should never take more time for a presentation than you've been given. So 15 minutes is the absolute maximum, and after 15 minutes your lecturers will tell you to stop. So this is a really important requirement. And because, of course, the PowerPoint presentation also should serve as a memory aid, it would be good to give handouts to the jury as well, right? So that they can check previous slides or that they can check what's still coming. Right, it's just for their convenience, so make sure that handouts are available for the jury. Okay, so these are the formal requirements. Now let's have a look at the more, let's say, content-related requirements with respect to goal, contents, and structure. There are 5 in total, and here they are. The goal of the presentation is clarified during the introduction, and the table of contents is discussed during the introduction. Those are the first 2. So in the introduction you need to say what the presentation is about, what you would like to achieve. And of course, just talking about the business plan is in this case not really the goal of the presentation, right? The goal of the presentation is to convince the jury that your plan is a good one. And the table of contents, of course, should be discussed as well so that people get an idea of what's coming and in what order. Now, the last 3 are perhaps a bit more complicated, so we'll zoom in on them for now. These 3 requirements are really closely related to the structure that we discussed in the very first web lecture. Now, if you recall, the first question that needs to be answered is what is the idea? You need to describe the idea, the plan that you have, because otherwise people cannot visualize what you're planning to do, and that will make the rest of the presentation, really difficult to understand for them. Who is the target group? So who is it for? Who is going to buy it? Who is going to be interested in it? Why will it be a success? So what sets this idea apart from other ideas? What evidence is there that this is actually something that people want, of course? How will the idea be promoted? So how will you make sure that people know that it exists? And finally, what's in it for the investors? What can they gain by investing in your idea, basically? There's a natural order to these questions, so make sure that you follow this order. Then, of course, you would score a yes on the final requirement. The information is presented in the right order. But also make sure that you answer these questions completely, but still without going into too many detail. So you should make sure that your presentation contains all necessary information, but also only necessary information. And that is why this structure is so convenient for you. Of course, we called it the right structure in the first web lecture, and there's a reason for that. So make sure that these questions are answered completely, and then you'll be all right as far as these requirements are concerned. Okay, the next category of requirements is related to the message. The take-home message of the presentation should be clear. The presentation should capture the attention of the audience, so the people should not be falling asleep. They should be able to follow you all the way through the 15 minutes. The information should be presented in an engaging way, so they should have the feeling that they're listening to something that they haven't heard before. They should have the feeling that their contribution is valued, and the information should be presented in such a way that it is easy to remember. And the most important thing there is that you limit the amount of information in the presentation, because what you don't want to do is end up like the Russian professor that we saw in the first web lecture, who was just bombarding his audience with information without really looking at them, without really engaging them in the presentation. So this is what we want to avoid. What we do want to do is promote interaction by asking questions, share your own or other people's experience, tell stories rather than facts, and make sure that you tell the audience something that they didn't know, because that of course keeps their attention span and it will make sure that they remember the things better after the presentation. Okay, so this is the message. Of course, the presentation aids have been covered in web lecture number 2 in quite some detail. So the lecturers do want to see whether you've picked up on this and whether you actually use the presentation aids to indicate structure, illustrate contents, and help the jury remember the presentation. So make sure that your PowerPoint file, or if you want to use a different format, of course, you're free to do so, but make sure that the file actually fulfills these 3 functions. Make sure that people know what the structure is, use illustrations like videos or pictures or tables or graphs to illustrate the contents, and build the slides in such a way that they are easy to grasp in a few seconds and help the jury remember. Of course, they should be free of spelling or grammatical mistakes, and they should contain a limited amount of information, because as we discussed, this is about the time that, well, people have at their disposal to glance at the slide and try to derive its meaning from it. So this is the 3-second rule, as you may remember. Now, another guideline that we discussed in the previous web lecture, that you should reserve just about 3 minutes for each slide. So make sure that you're not putting too many slides in your presentation, and make sure that the amount of information on a single slide is limited, right? So always try to explain what's on there and make sure that you have enough time for that. Now, the last but definitely not the least important category is the category of the attitude. You have to present with a certain attitude. So what is it that the lecturers want to see? They want to see that you're dressed in a professional way. So no jeans and sneakers, but a business-like style, obviously. They also would like to see that you're presenting rather than reading. So don't read from the screen, but also not from your memory aids, maybe your flashcards that you've created. You should appear confident while you're presenting. You should be looking at the jury while you're presenting. You should be able to answer questions accurately and in a non-defensive way. Right? So this is about basically your delivery, more or less. If we zoom in on the 2nd and the 4th requirement, don't read but present. Look at the jury while you're presenting. This basically means that you should avoid at all times to be looking at the screen. At the screen like this young man is doing. Make sure that you're facing the jury and looking at them. And don't read from the screen, don't read from your memory. That's basically what I said before as well. Right? If you think about the nerves, you should appear confident. Then, well, maybe use one of the techniques that we discussed earlier to reduce your nerves. So look at a fish tank full of swimming fish, work out, listen to classical music, meditate if that is your thing, but just make sure that you're as relaxed as possible when you start the presentation. So that makes it easier for you to fulfill this particular requirement. Okay, that concludes the third and final web lecture. I would like to thank you for your attention. Thank you for watching. I hope you found these lectures helpful. I hope they help you prepare the presentation. And if you have any questions about presentation techniques in general, you can always send me an email. This is my address. If you have any questions about the procedure for your particular presentations, of course, the lecturers at IB would be the designated people to answer those questions. So I wish you the best of luck with your presentations, and perhaps we'll see each other again in the future. Goodbye.